Apologies to everyone. Apologies to everyone for the delay. Let's all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Everybody who is on the roll call on the agenda is present. Announcements. Township meetings are recorded for the purpose of preparing the minutes, and the recording is destroyed after the minutes are approved. The meeting will be posted online on the Township YouTube channel. The link can be found on the Board of Supervisors page on the Township website. It is requested that all persons wishing to speak before the board shall state their name, address, and the subject matter upon which they wish to speak for the record. In the interest of facilitating the business of the board, all persons addressing the board shall be limited to 3 minutes. I'm going to repeat that, limited to 3 minutes, unless such time is extended by the chair for good cause. Individuals are requested to remain in their seats and to respect when other persons are speaking. The Board of Supervisors will provide a reasonable opportunity for citizens to comment on any non-agenda items after all agenda items have been addressed, but prior to the adjournment of the public meeting. We had an executive session, you probably all guessed that, prior to this meeting to receive legal guidance. Anything else? And litigation. The first item on the agenda, sewer mandatory connection discussion, we are going to table that until probably our next meeting next week. That takes us to the next item, which is ordinance hearing for the single access road amendment. Who's going to take that?
That would be me. So this is an amendment to the Township Subdivision and Land Development Ordinance. This amendment was originally put together by the Township Planning Commission with help of the Township Planner from the Montgomery County Planning Commission. I took their changes and put them into an appropriate ordinance form that can be enacted and then sent to our codifier to amend this portion of the Township Code. This ordinance has been appropriately advertised for the hearing tonight. Has been sent off officially back to the Township Planning Commission and back to the Montgomery County Planning Commission as required by the Municipalities Planning Code, and has been appropriately posted by township staff here at the Township Building. As such, we're looking to have the board enact this ordinance at tonight's meeting. If there are any specific questions, either Jason and I should be able to answer them.
Any questions from the board about this? I think we discussed it, about 2 meetings ago, 3 meetings ago?
Yes, probably 3 meetings ago, actually.
And the Planning Commission has reviewed and provided their comments as well. There's no comments from the board.
Okay. That being said, unless there's comments from the audience, the board can take a vote.
Seeing no comments from the public, the motion would be, I move to adopt ordinance 2024, it's 01? Okay, 01. Amending Chapter 145 Subdivision and Land Development of the Township Code concerning regulations for single access roads. Do I have a motion?
Also move.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Supervisor Halter made the motion. Supervisor Byrd made the second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. All right. That brings us to the next ordinance hearing. It's the Simmons Road truck restriction that would prohibit trucks on Simmons Road.
Correct. So this ordinance was also discussed, I believe, 2 to 3 meetings ago. As described, this ordinance would restrict trucks the entire length of Simmons Road, not based on weight, but rather based on truck length and geometry of the road, which the township can do under the Motor Vehicle Code. This ordinance has been appropriately advertised for the hearing for tonight's meeting and has been sent off to the Montgomery County Law Library as required. Since it's not a land development type of ordinance, it does not need to be sent to the planning commissions. The ordinance is very short and, it's somewhat self-explanatory. It just amends our current code to add Simmons Road as a road that has this restriction on it. Once the ordinance is enacted, our road crew will then be authorized to post the appropriate signs for these restrictions.
Any comments from the board?
I just have a quick question. When they post the road, is it before they get to the road or is it after they get on the road?
So the posting should be right at the intersection so a truck can see it before they
Before they
actually
make a
turn
turn.
onto the road. But
Okay.
it's on the road itself.
Okay, thank you.
The appropriate locations, size, and type of signage is all controlled by PennDOT regulations. Even though this is a township road, we still have to fully comply with all those regulations.
So, Chuck Geiser, just to clarify, this ordinance is for the entire length of Simmons Road. So there'll
Yes.
be signs on Little Road in either direction, and there'll be signs on Big Road and signs on 29, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, every entrance or turn onto this road, there needs to be signage.
Any questions from the public? Looks like we're set to go.
Yep.
All right, so the motion would read, I move to adopt ordinance 2024-02, amending Chapter 158, Vehicles and Traffic of the Township Code to prohibit trucks on Simmons Road. It just prohibit trucks, but shouldn't that be more specific to prohibit what kind of trucks? Is that in the details? I mean, that's what the motion reads, but the actual ordinance will be more specific.
Your code actually
Yeah,
defines what
the
a truck.
code, there's a portion that's already in the code that describes what a truck is. What does it mean by saying trucks? What's
Okay.
actually being prohibited, yes.
Okay, super, thanks. Do I have a motion?
Also move.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Chuck Geiser will second.
Great. Supervisor Halter made the motion. Supervisor Yiser made the second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. All right, that brings us to
Thank you.
Verizon Cable Franchise Agreement discussion.
And this is me also. As before, this has been discussed in the past. The township is represented by a specialized attorney who handles telecommunications issues specifically for municipalities. He's based in Pittsburgh. We are part of a consortium of Bucks and Montgomery County municipalities that hired him to negotiate with Verizon for this franchise agreement extension. As stated before, in my experience, what Mr. Cohen has gotten us is the best we're going to be able to get. We have this ordinance advertised for adoption at your meeting next week. We also, as required under the law, are scheduling a hearing for the residents to raise any issues regarding Verizon's service within the township. So next week, we will hold the hearing on Verizon's provisions of service. And then we'll have a second hearing regarding the adoption of the ordinance, which will then authorize the execution of the franchise agreement by the chair. So I just wanted to bring this up at tonight's meeting, just make sure there was no questions, the board understood what was going on. We don't need to have a deep discussion at this time unless the board or the audience has any questions.
Any questions from the board?
This is exactly the same as the last round
Yes.
we did. It's exactly the same.
Yes.
Okay.
When you say exactly the same,
Well, the whole process.
it's the same process. The franchise agreement is somewhat different, but yes, the whole process is exactly the same. It's what we did with Comcast a few years ago.
Okay.
Exactly same process.
So in this hearing, you have residents can come out and talk about the service. Can they come out and talk about pretty much anything, like how Verizon leaves cables hanging for months and months and months?
Yes, they
Without
can.
repairing them?
Yes, they can.
Good.
Absolutely.
Maybe I'll testify too.
Yes, they can talk about anything in regards to Verizon in the township. What I cannot promise is any reaction whatsoever from Verizon. So, yeah, if there's no questions, not looking for a vote or anything, we can just move on.
Anything from the public? Okay. All right, the next item is Regional Mutual Aid Agreement for Emergency Services.
Okay, so this came from Pat Roberts, who's our Township Emergency Management Coordinator, where some of the local emergency management officials have been working on forming an emergency management regional team made up of the municipalities and non-municipal partners covering Perkiomen Valley and Springford school districts and the Perkiomen Creek corridor. I've listed the municipalities to include and the non-municipal partners. I'll read that if you want me to, or, okay. I did send this to Peter. He did send back his revised response, which is in Dropbox currently and is in your packet. I don't know if you had any comments regarding.
Yeah, my revisions to it, there are a bunch of edits, but really, the only big one, substantive one is, we did add a indemnification clause to the agreement, so that, the participants providing, the assistance, if they end up getting sued for some reason, the participant receiving, the assistance is indemnifying them, which is, quite normal in these sorts of situations. So there was language already in the agreement where it said the participants wouldn't go after each other for costs, but there was nothing in the agreement regarding third parties filing suit. So that's what this indemnification would cover. So that's really the only big issue. Otherwise, I had some just little changes here and there as to the language.
And also, I wouldn't be looking for a decision tonight. This would be, if the board so chooses, would be on next week's agenda for any kind of approval. Although with Peter's edits, I guess we probably should send this to the other respective parties before maybe we make any decisions, or.
Yeah. Maybe you should talk to Pat Roberts, since he's our coordinator and kind of our point of contact on this. And I don't know who prepared it. If, Pat can tell me who prepared it, I can reach out to that person directly also.
So you think this will be ready for a decision next week?
Probably not.
No. Okay, so it probably won't, so maybe the next work session.
So we'll say, yeah, I'll say a future meeting, but I'll reach out to Pat, talk to Pat, and see who we need to get this to. and then, and kind of go from there before the board makes a decision.
Okay, great.
Let me just ask, I mean, what this agreement covers, I mean, it's already sort of been happening. This just formalizes it, you know, so-and-so needs our help, we provide it.
I would agree, reading through it, we know it happens if another community is getting hit and we are able to provide the services. I think they just wanted to do something more, maybe more formal. I don't know what, that aspect, I don't know what drove it, other than, you know, maybe it makes it more of a collective effort. I can't say for sure what, who pushed them into doing this.
But the municipal partners that you have listed here, they're all seem to be willing to sign on, right?
I would assume any municipality listed, they've shown interest, or their emergency, that of joining. I haven't gotten any follow-up from Pat that any communities or municipalities have moved forward on this. I don't know where they're at in that process.
But just for the public's sake, I mean, we're talking about Collegeville Borough, Limerick Township, Lower Providence Township, Perkiomen Township, Phoenixville Borough, Royersford Borough, Trapp Borough, Schwenksville Borough, Skip-Pack Township, and Upper Providence Township. And then a bunch of non-municipal partners like the Red Cross. Right?
Yes.
That's all I have. Thanks.
Okay, if there's nothing else on this, we will come back to it at a future meeting. Next item is a request for an estimate from the township engineer for a Planning Commission 2025 Monco 2040 grant submission.
Yes, the Planning Commission is looking at a submission for the 2025-2040 Monco grant cycle. At the August 6th Board of Supervisor General Meeting, the board gave the PC approval to add this as one of their upcoming meetings. The PC did discuss this at their last meeting, which is it's a sidewalk trail starting at the edge of the Manning property along Gravel Pike, and it would run towards Spring Mount Road. It would run primarily along the roadside in front of the property, which would be Moshe's apartments and other businesses. The PC's working group for the Delphi-Schwenksville Trail was directed by the PC to meet and clarify what the scope of work would be. They would also like to have Carol provide a plan. What we'd be looking for, or what they're looking for, is an approval by the board for Carol to do an estimate.
I have a question about the scope. Are we looking just at a sidewalk, or are we looking at a sidewalk and a trail? So where will this project begin and end? Phil, you want to come up to the microphone?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Is the green light on?
Yes, the green
Okay.
light is on. What Jason mentioned is accurate to what has taken place. The PC has wanted to be able to utilize the county grant program. We have begun the discussion of how we could best put an application in for 2025. That said, we defined that the sidewalking trail, as you pointed out, was probably the best, most workable application that we could put in order to access that grant program. So basically, we have kind of a concept here to try to accomplish something at that site. We haven't defined the specifics, so we did reach out to Carol, and she provided us with some of her perspective on what might take place there and some questions that she would like to have answered before she would commit to beginning the process of putting together an estimate. We've also interacted with the property owner, Leanne Manning, and she's willing to work with us, but she also had expressed some concerns, et cetera. So the Planning Commission felt inclined to try to reactivate the a working group, which you had suggested to us was important to the process. And we would like to begin the process of trying to get those specifics, I guess, more accurately and definitively identified so we can, provide Carol with the basis for putting together some kind of estimate or at least concept plan that gives us a guesstimate, if you will, as to whether this is a feasible grant application. As you well know, the grant applications, especially in a project like this, take a good deal of time. There are a lot of unforeseens, cancellation of meetings and so forth that can create stalls. We have about 5 months till the due date. And I think it's, kind of an appropriate thing to try to get this thing as up and running as quickly as possible and do so with the best, results that will be enabled by that.
Okay, but my question was, where is this going to begin and where is it going to end?
Well, as you can
What
see.
are you looking at the whole thing all the way into Schwenksville or a portion of it?
No. The one thing that I can do to define it more specifically to your question is that we, in working with Leanne, the property owner, she felt inclined to say, and I agree with her on this, that the intersection crossing at Spring Mount Road and Gravel Pike would not be part of this project. It would become we'll call it the point of beginning for a sidewalk connection that would go clear across the frontage of their property, which is Delphi Junction. That's Moshe's, and there's associated apartments and commercial businesses in there, to the county property, which is on the south end, which that cursor was just going around the X there. So that's basically a linear trail sidewalk connection that we're looking to do. It probably will be sidewalked in a traditional sense in the grassed area. It probably will have some kind of, we'll call it restricted access across the section where the parking is at the southern end, but it will not cross the intersection because the indication is that to do that intersection crossing and improve that intersection would be well beyond the scope of what that grant application would provide funding for. So,
Okay, so where do you anticipate this project ending?
on which end?
It's
This-
not going on the county property.
Yeah, the two X's on the.
So
the
it's,
plan.
so it's just going to be like at Moshe's train stop area? Just
Delphi
there.
Junction, yes, yeah, correct.
Okay,
Now, to add to your question, eventually, we would like to see that connection go clear through to Schwanksville Borough. And then, of course, we'd like to see the intersection improve for pedestrian use at some future point. But I guess the idea at this particular time is to delimit it to that because of the costs for doing all that, and as well as the county at this point still has not reconciled the ownership of the Perkiomen Railroad bed right away that they've been grappling with for a year or more. So that said, this is the scope of what we're looking to accomplish with the Montco 2040 implementation grant application for this year.
so it would end just before the Spring Mount intersection?
Yes, that's right.
And approximately how long is that? I mean, approximately. I guess what I'm just trying to do is how would we compare it? Because we had two sidewalk projects we've done
Oh,
already.
I see where you're going with
The
this.
one, the one on Goshen and the one we're doing now. So how would this compare? Is it the same length? Is it twice as long? Is it 3 times as long? Is it half as long? Just so we can get kind of a ballpark idea of what this is going to involve.
3 and 400 feet.
And so how does that compare, Carol?
What's that?
The Goshen sidewalk?
Yeah, I think it is a little longer than that.
I,
Yeah, it's kind of, that number sort of sticks out in my head. I know it's mentioned in the county's feasibility study from several years back, but I don't.
So the future benefit would be, it would hopefully eventually be connected to a larger trail, but the current benefit, would it be mostly to the business owners there? I'm just trying to understand.
Well, the anticipation is that county has committed to trying to open the section from the southern end of what we're proposing through to Schwanksville so pedestrians would be able to move from Schwanksville Borough up to Moshes and back and forth. So there's a benefit, we'll say, in the near term, and hopefully at some future point, the township has set goals for sidewalking and or pedestrian connections to the townhomes using Spring Mount Road. I think Carol had brought that up as a possibility. And of course, we would also like to encourage the development of Delphi Village, and then the county has projected at some future point to put a trail that would go on out to the western end via Sunrise Mill. So there's a lot of, we'll call it, anticipated, connections and benefits to be derived into the future. But as we well know, sidewalks and pedestrian connections have to be done as opportunities present themselves. And this is one where we have a willing property owner. We have a grant application that can provide us with 80% of the costs. And, the PC has been looking for ways to realize some of the goals that have been set in the comprehensive plan. So we think it's a great project, and that's why we're looking to do it in 2025.
Yeah, Carol, do you have any thoughts on
I
what this?
do. First, the length of this, to answer the question, I did find the length of this is approximately 650 feet. I have some thoughts on this project. I have a lot of questions on this project, and I don't want to be airing them here in front of the entire board when I haven't had a chance to communicate with a working committee yet. So ideally, I'd like a chance to sit down with a working committee to help hash out the scope of this thing. And then we could come back to the board for authorization to do anything additional in terms of estimating plan costs, estimating construction costs, come back to the board for that. But I think a first step would really be for me to sit down with a working committee if everybody would be so inclined. So
I
we could
think
hash
that
out
would
the
be a
scope.
great idea.
Yeah, I think it would be useful for the board to set some parameters for that, like on how much time, since it's going to come out of our budget. So what do you think?
Maybe it's helpful if you guys, the working group comes to Carol with what you're looking to get from her, and then, are you put like a time limit, like an hour, 2 hours?
Yeah, it's not going to be open-ended. I mean, that's what we usually do. This is just speculative at this point. So what do you think, Carol, to have a conversation?
I think it would be super to have a meeting down here at the township with a working committee. So, yeah, we'd probably be talking about a few hours to be able to get that organized and held, so that we can kind of hammer out the scope of this thing and then bring it back to the board.
So we're looking at 2 hours, maybe 3. We can keep it within that scope.
I would suggest 3, but
Is that okay with the rest of the board?
I think that's 3 would probably be minimum amount, that people need time to think and discuss, so I think that's fine, yeah.
Yeah, I guess my real question, and maybe Carol can get at this, is we have to convince Montgomery County that this is a worthwhile project, not just because it's a sidewalk, because it's a sidewalk people will use and because it's needed. And that's what I'd like to know. So in addition to the cost of it and what it's going to cost the township and the engineering challenges, but is this a worthwhile project that will serve many people as a project
Well,
in its own?
It's not a
can-
standalone, right? It's not a standalone
No,
project.
absolutely.
It's part of a
That-
bigger
that's
piece,
What I
yeah.
was going to comment, that, this is actually, the connection between Delphi and Schwanksville is a multi-municipal project that the county has already endorsed and sort of tried to encourage that we do it as a partnership separate from their doing a circuit trail, which they anticipate doing sometime in the future. So there's already the groundwork for getting, if you will, some of that, kind of inclusion, if you will, in this project, so.
So who would be in the working group that you would meet
Well-
with Carol?
I'm sorry.
Who would be in that group that would meet
Well, I
with Carol?
certainly would fall back to the 3 members, myself, Mr. Schmidt, and Mr. Pocus, who were the designated working group for the Delphi to Schwanksville Trail or connection. But I would also think that it would be appropriate to invite Leanne Manning to come. She is the property owner, and I think that, her input and concerns would be, important to trying to define the project as specifically as we can and bring it back to you.
Okay, yeah, I think my only concern is that she would kind of be the beneficiary of this improvement, that we have to be careful that she's just providing boundaries for you and saying, like she expressed the other night, I don't want to lose parking spaces over this, right?
Well, we could do it exclusive of her and send her the documentation of the meeting so she could respond if you want to do it that
I
way too.
think it might be wiser to do it that way.
Yeah, sure.
I think it's just a better look.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, I think it's just, it protects
open to
her and it
suggestions.
protects the planning commission since her business would be a beneficiary. Not that any of us don't trust it, but I think it's prudent to proceed that way, just as good practice.
Okay, fair enough, yeah. So I guess as far as timing goes, our original anticipation was to kind of have this discussion at the general meeting. We bumped it up a bit here to the work session. So to try to organize and get this working group to meet, I think might take more than getting it together by next Tuesday. So I don't know what the availability of the folks involved will be, but we'll do our best to get back to you as quickly as possible. Again, I think that, with the possibility that there might be cancellation of meetings and snow events or whatever that might impede the process, I think we need to try to keep moving at with a certain sense of urgency. But I mean, it's not, it's going to happen tomorrow, but we do need to kind of stay on task here.
Jason, do you want to coordinate this? Do you have the bandwidth for that?
Yeah, I can. I mean,
Does that make sense?
my thought is probably we'll be looking at the October work
Right, I
session.
mean, just setting it up, yeah.
But we can, he's not probably wrong trying to do it this week, might be a little bit tight.
Why don't you and Jason discuss how you want to do it? How's
We'll
that?
hammer it out.
And whatever you agree
My
to.
people
Yeah.
call your people, how's that? All right.
And the other thing, and I don't want your meeting to get too lengthy, but I remember in some of these projects, the county has requirements like handicap crossings and widths and things like that. So just maybe keeping that in mind as we look at this project. So there's no unanticipated work at the last minute, which we did have with the Goshen. I mean, it was after we got the grant, but there was still, we had to do some extra work, as I recall. All right, any questions from the public about this? No, okay, that brings us to the end of our business. Is there any public comment? Go ahead.
This is just a question for Carol. Jamie was out at our house this week to get GPS coordinates of our rain garden, and we were just curious about that.
We keep a list of all the BMPs in the township.
Okay.
And we take advantage of having the GPS equipment so that we can put it accurately on a map.
Okay,
It's
perfect.
a one-stop.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your cooperation.
Go ahead, Diane.
First, just a quick comment. I think the two codes, it's on. Diane Jurin, 9 Zieglerville Road. I think the two codes you passed tonight will benefit the residents very much so. So thank you for looking into that. Two requests. One is that perhaps monthly we can get updates on Bob Preston's designing of the Zieglerville Road sewer line so that the public is aware of how that's going. And if, there's nothing that somebody says, no update this month, but this month Bob did this and that. And then also a request that when you start to look at your international property maintenance code, that you give the residents a good amount of time to know about that. They may want to provide input, if that's even on your list of things. I know you have a list of different codes that you want to look at. And that was it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Anyone on Zoom? Looks like a no. Any supervisor comment? I have a supervisor comment. I noticed, again, over the weekend, we had some folks inside our circle, which I believe is a line of sight and a problem. So I just want to let everybody out there know, if you see people in the circle, please be safe. Do not turn your head, do not look, keep your eye on the road. We don't need to have any accidents by distractions at the circle. Thank you. And the meeting is adjourned.